Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can we start over?
Little sneak peek for those of you watching on the stream there.
Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. If you're seeing the big smile, you got to go back and watch this in the stream from the very beginning. This is a great day to be in the U.S. I feel like I'm glad to be me on today. Today is a very good day. I'm in the studio today with my main man, John B, in the place to be. What's good, John?
Hello. That's a good way to put it. I woke up with a little bit of jump today, too.
Did you?
Glad to be me. That's
Man,
a good way to put the feeling.
You know, when I thought about everything that is going on in the world, and there's a lot for us to talk about, and we'll get to some of that, I was like, today it's good to be Kareem on today. So I'm excited. The weather is excited, even though the weather isn't weathering. And here, if you're in the Midwest, you can understand what I'm talking about. We got a little bit of warm weather here in the Midwest. I would say right at the top of spring. And I was like, wow, it's going to be a hot summer. And then summer came in, and
it was literally like the last week of spring was 90 degrees.
It's 90 degrees,
yeah.
95, 96.
And humid and rainy.
Yeah. And now here we are in the thick of things. It is officially. Can you believe that this year is flying by? We are in the month of July almost. It's crazy how time has been flying. I don't know if you guys are out there. I was always told that, and this is what kind of gives me pause in saying this. As a kid growing up, I was always told, yeah, if you think the days are moving by now, you wait till you get older, the time flies by. And I literally am trying to catch bearings of what day today is.
I remember an experience when I was really little. I must have been in like kindergarten or preschool or whatever. And I didn't see a kid that lived across the street from me. It was probably more like 3 weeks.
Right.
But I couldn't remember his name. I was like, who are you? It was like I'd never met him before because 3 weeks was such a long time.
I was trying to, I don't, maybe I shouldn't join you in that conversation because I promise you there's some people out there saying, no, you were having a senior moment. But there was someone that I had seen, and I would be around them like almost every day for a period of 2 or 3 years. And I was trying to go back, and I was like, what's their name again? What's their, like, this is someone that you should know very well. But hey, it happens to the best of us. We are hoping that as we continue to get through this year and we actually begin to experience what is supposed to be the dog days of summer because they're supposed to be hot and long, I'm hoping that we have that opportunity. I don't know about you all. I am born and raised here in the Midwest, but I absolutely, positively love Southern heat. Not Georgia Southern heat or Florida Southern heat, or Alabama Southern heat, but more like Texas Southern heat, where it's 95 degrees and just blazing hot. Not a ton of humidity. Arizona may be a bit much for me. My time in Arizona was wonderful, but when you're walking and your shoes are getting stuck underneath your feet on the pavement, you're wearing those little flip-flops and you stand too long in the pavement.
Feels like you're breathing soup. Yeah, I get it.
I can do away with that, but I'm excited to be here. For all of you all that are tuning in via our social media streams, we want you guys to like, tag, and share this conversation with those around you. Okay, we got to get to it. I don't want to have this conversation. But the entire world is talking about this, Jonathan.
It's so goofy.
All right, we're going to get to it. Everyone knows that the historical presidential debate, the very first one of 2024, and
so
hopefully
early.
The last, which is so early, which means by the time if they decide to have another one, how much older will Biden be by then? I don't know how this would work, but and it's sad, right? Because it's crazy. So we had our first presidential debate, and we're hot off of it. Normally, I could ignore these things and I wouldn't go down the rabbit hole, but it is so fresh and it's everything that everyone's talking about. And we'll be talking about probably for the next 2-3 weeks at least, unless something different happens in the news cycle. But I'm sure they'll pull clips from it to share as we move forward. Jonathan, did you watch this debate first of all?
I wasn't going to. I was planning on just going to bed and having a nice long sleep. And
So
then
was I.
And then I saw it come up on my phone. I'm like, I'll just turn it on. I'll just have it on as I'm trying to sleep. It was so silly. I couldn't stop paying attention.
My handicap is 9. Mine is 8. Can you carry your own? This is what we've come to America. But let me give my post debate analysis, because everyone seems to be waiting for this. Absolutely no one, really. I don't even if anyone pays attention or cares. But what I do want to say in terms of this debate, Jonathan, I was just like you. I had a long day. I was like, hey, I'm just going to go down, relax. There's a new show on Netflix that is really, really, really good. It's called Your Honor. So if you guys are looking for something that you could sit down and watch and actually watch seasons 1 and 2, it is a phenomenal movie. So Your Honor. So let me go ahead and watch Your Honor. And it was my mom who called. She says, oh, I was just calling to make sure you didn't miss the debate. I was like, I kind of had planned on not watching it. And then, so I turned it on. And as I'm watching, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, couldn't Joe Biden have at least gone to the tanner? Like, get a little color. You always see presidential or people that are in politics. Obama even did it. Okay, I would see him get a little bit, a little tan. He's bronze. He went to the tanner.
Get the hair dye out.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Put a little, because the office of presidents will gray you, but just dye the edges of your hair, look a little different. And so I was like, what was his preparation strategy? Like, well, we're gonna go in there and be exactly what we've been. That's what everyone's afraid of. So, like, let's give him something new, jumpstart the conversation. He looked good on stage. And it was, I'm going to tell you when I was done with the debate. Okay, the conversations, one candidate was lying. One candidate, I have no idea what he was saying. So I couldn't tell if he was telling the truth or lying. But this is when I ended the debate. And by all means, Donald Trump won this debate because I think he was the only person that was actively debating on the stage. And I'm going to be 100%.
Neither of them is very good at debating.
But what I will tell you is that whoever prepped Donald prepped him. Because in my mind, I'm like, I'm not watching this debate, because when they shut off Donald Trump's mic, he's going to go over and take, Joe Biden's mic and start yelling at him through that one. But dude was like reserved. He was, and I want to say dude, but he was reserved. He was cool. He handled himself. And I think one of the reasons was because he was struggling to understand what Joe Biden was saying.
He was just sitting there.
And so he was, a couple of times he was looking at him and he said this, and this is when I said, oh, I'm done with this. Joe Biden said, well, when we did this and we had the best numbers. And then it was Trump's turn. He's like, I don't even know how to respond to this, because I don't know what he said at the end of his statement. And I don't think he does either. I was like, oh, I'm done.
Have you seen, do you know who Shane Gillis is?
Yes.
The comedian. Have you seen his bit about debating between Trump and Biden?
No, I haven't.
He talks about how Trump was able to trounce everybody in his party because he would just come out here and then he goes up against Biden and there's nothing. He's not getting anything because Biden doesn't even know. It's so funny. I recommend it.
Man, our listeners were waiting for our commentary. So this is my take. So I think that Trump won this debate. But it's kind of like, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. I'm not sure what the prize was. I think that for the most part, if you were going to vote for Donald Trump, you're still going to vote for Donald Trump. If you're going to vote for Biden, you're going to vote for Biden. However, the polls immediately say that there's 18% like, wait a minute, I'm not so sure. And I'm going to say this because I know that Democrats all over the world are imploding. And I turned on Fox this morning and I turned on CNN this morning. I went to ABC. So I'm like listening to what everybody is saying to get the lowdown. And it was interesting because just as I assumed, I was like, oh, head for the hills. If I were running the Democratic Party or a strategist for this, I'm like, run for the hills. Oh my gosh, what are we going to take cover? It was so interesting. Just looking at social media lines and things that were posted in media headlines and news articles and things, how folks are really trying to say, well, it wasn't that bad. But my thing is this: there's someone who was sitting with President Biden that has been seeing him in operation for the past 6 months. There have been statements about his senior moments, him taking the short stack of steps instead of the long stack of steps up to the Air Force One. Just things, how he's watching and he doesn't seem as feeble. They went crazy when the report came out about the documents case, where the guy's like, listen, why should I press charges against him? Because I think he's old. He probably doesn't remember half of what we would talk about, and it wouldn't do much good, right? So there was a lot of upset folks talking about those things. However, what happened on last night, even with the people who were in the Democratic Party that have been saying, yo, we need a new candidate, I think that there was a lot of justification for folks' fears. Yesterday was probably the worst that I've ever seen President Biden look on TV. Now, what I will say is that his points, or in terms of his messaging, was consistent and clear. That part that you could hear. Now they're saying that he had a cold or something. He just didn't seem like his voice was clear.
Sounded sick.
He sounded sick, yeah. So I'm like, can't you like call it off, or can't you? I mean, I don't know, but it wasn't good. It was not a good showing. And so I think that I pray that something happens and people are talking about get a new candidate. I'm like, well, you got this whole thing called the vice president, and they've hid Kamala underneath a rock somewhere for the past 4 years, and you can't put someone else in that position because she is an African-American woman, which is the strongest voting base that the Democratic Party has. And there might be some complications if you bring someone else in and you overlook the office of the vice president. But listen, this is the way politics is. It goes. Our nominees are nominees. Love them or hate them. They are what they are. I particularly, it was a struggle watching, because I'm like, we have to vote for one of these individuals. This is the greatest nation on earth, and this is the best we got.
I started looking into independent candidates. I did. I was like, all right, if I feel like I need to vote against both of these guys, what do I got? What are my options here? I'm still doing some reading. But...
Are you serious?
I've voted independent before.
I mean, I don't think that I have. I can't remember that I have. I know I have in
third
other,
party, not independent.
Yeah. I have for other elections, like lower elections. My parents had a friend that he was born in the U.S., but he was Nigerian. He was raised in Nigeria, and I still remember his name because it was so fun to say, Wondermu Mersha. And he was running for like state senate or something. And I was like, I think he got like all of 7 votes. That was me, his family, and my mom and dad. So, and that was it. But anyways, so soon there will be a need for us to do and to carry out the most important role of our democratic function, and that is to vote. And so there's a lot that we have to reckon with. There's a lot. And honestly, I think a lot of what we're voting for has to be centered around policy. There's two trains of thoughts that Democrats want to be in love with their candidate, and Republicans just want to be in line with their candidate. They want to be in line with the policies, what they think it is. And Democrats want to have this warm and fuzzy thing. And I don't think that either sides of this coin is getting what they truly desire. We see a lot of consolidation behind a candidate, but in private rooms and in secret conversations, folks are not in alignment and in tune, and even some things that were said yesterday during the debate. And so it's if you are feeling, and I want to say this, if you are an American at this time and you're feeling frustrated, whenever you think about politics and you're feeling like the world is on your show and you're just weighted by the decision of who to vote for and who we have running for these offices, join the crowd. I don't think that you're on the fray. I think that that's where the majority of America is. And so we still have a responsibility to carry out our democratic processes, which means that we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do. And voting is coming. I think that one thing that is really evident at this point, I don't think Donald Trump has to worry about announcing who his VP is going to be anytime soon, because at this point, it doesn't matter. We are a cult of personality as a nation. And I loved him on The Apprentice. But as another presidential candidate, again, he and Biden, neither of them inspire. Neither of them really make me look forward with hope. Neither of them do I want responsible for appointing Supreme Court justices. I don't want them to have. I don't want them. But unfortunately, is what we got. So we're gonna move forward. And those of you, and I got a lot of friends who are working on the campaign. I get phone calls. I did at the very beginning, like, hey, can we call? No, don't. I don't want to be in a commercial. Don't ask me questions. I am not the guy to ask questions on this year because I'm really underwhelmed and I'm disappointed at our leadership in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and the independent spaces. I don't think that we've really allowed ourselves to do a fulfillment of the rites of passages where we bring in new inspired hope, we give them a platform, and we allow them to share their thoughts of progressive movement, of innovation, of just hope. And that has not taken place in either party. We have a stalemate with old folks who don't understand when their time has expired and will not pass the baton. And so this is the year of the Olympics. Hopefully they'll take a look and pay attention that after you run your 100 meters in the 4x100, you've got to pass the baton. And so the lesson for this year is pass the baton. But anyways, and so that's what we're dealing with. I want to move on to something different, which is much more inspiring and makes me feel good. The Dow Championship, which is now the new brand, which was the Great Lakes Bay Invitational for a number of years, now rebranded as the Dow Championship, new look, new logo. But it's the same, great golfing. The Dow Championship is a sanctioned LPGA tournament that takes place, a really nice purse of $3 million. I think a lot of people were surprised when they found out that there was $3 million that these ladies could win on this tour. But during this entire celebration, and I was out there the other day, and there was a bazillion people out there, and it was really kind of exciting. And let me tell you what I thought when I was out there. I thought to myself, like, I go by the Saginaw Country Club, and then I go to the Midland Country Club, and I'm like, there's a whole lot of country club to be desired if you live in Saginaw. I'm like, this place is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the lakes, the streams, the waterfalls, the ponds, the entire place is so amazing. So, Dow Chemical, is making Midland great, and the facilities where they are is absolutely amazing. But I want to talk about something else that's going on. Is it possible, Jonathan, for the Democratic Party to change its candidate? It's the way we do. They can, leading up to the Democratic convention, they could say, hey, he could drop out. They can institute. But when you think about name recognition, when you think about putting people together, when you think about putting it's not going to happen.
I give it a 15% chance, which is pretty big.
That's more than what I would give it. I think that we're stuck with what we got, 7%. I think that Joe is stubborn as a mule. When he's first, if you remember, and I didn't want to go back. We're going to go back to the Dow Championship. I hate when people throw me into these. I'm going down the rabbit hole. If you remember when he was running for president, the whole messaging was that he was only going to run for 1 year, which is or 1 term.
Okay.
And I think that was one of the reasons why a lot of people didn't want to vote for him. Like, and then we're going to have Auntie Kamala. Like, really? But that was the messaging, if I'm correct. And I think a lot of people like, okay, we'll vote for you to get Donald Trump out of office. I think is what a lot of people were thinking. And now he's like, I'm the only person who's ever beat Donald Trump. Yes, and you're the only person who let me stop. I was going to say drinks Ensure in the morning before he goes out and covers the world. Is there a disclaimer that comes on before and after? Allegedly,
nope.
There's no disclaimer. Okay.
The opinions expressed on this program do not reflect the opinions of the WSGW or what's the other
or its affiliates
or its affiliates.
Yeah, and so I said allegedly. So we're saying allegedly. Let's get back to the Dow Chair. I want to be inspired today. So, anyways, I told you, I wake up great, feeling I'm excited to be Kareem today. The Dow Championship, along with that, there is a SOAR conference that also comes along with it. And SOAR is
I bet they're pretty sore when they're done golfing. Like, that takes a lot out of you, I'm guessing.
Well, most of the people in there, I mean, I guess they are golfers. They are golfers, but the SOAR is really about
it's SOAR.
Yeah, SOAR, right. Yeah. So it's success, opportunities, acceleration, and resilience. And it's really about bringing everyone to the workplace. And so I think it's appropriate that we're going to talk today about the counter movement to DEI, which we all know as diversity, equity, inclusion. We'll talk about the new one, the new lingo that's going to come up that is the counter argument to that space. But anyway, so the SOAR conference takes place, and my kids, there's a program, the Dow Treasure Academy, that I created and I work with Dow Chemical, and they are sponsoring this program. They've been absolutely amazing. We're getting ready to conclude our first cohort of students. I've had them since they were 9th graders. They are going to be seniors this year, graduating. So every year they're invited to this exclusive meeting. Now, when I say this is exclusive, a lot of Dow leadership, salespersons, and if you're not coming with a client, you don't get invited. So there's a lot of people who work for the company who don't get that invitation, but they extend this invitation to our group, which is the Dow Treasure Academy. And there's another group down in Detroit, which is Midnight Golf. Now, I just want to share with you the quality of individuals that these young people are exposed to, that they're given opportunities to network with, to meet. And then our kids this year were focused. They were highlighted, meant that they had about a 15-minute segment on the main stage being interviewed about what they're doing, their future successes, and the impact of DTA, Dow Treasure Academy. So the director of inclusion is Dr. Alveda Williams, absolutely phenomenal. Took over for Karen Carter, who used to be there, who is now the president of packaging.
We've had her on the show a couple times.
Yeah, she's been on the show, right? And that is the largest business that does the largest business for Dow. She is the president. Then there is the CEO of the MEDC. He was the keynote speaker to kick everything off. Quentin Messer, amazing story, doing great work. I've met him a couple of times. The CEO of the Dow Chemical Corporation, Jim Fitterling, is also in the room interfacing with our young kids. This was my favorite, Nicole Lynn, who is the president, or actually the director of football for Clutch Sports. Clutch Sports is Rich Paul. Rich Paul is LeBron's friend who came out of high school with him, the Four Horsemen, his 4 friends that ran his business. Now he is an agent. He is now dating Adele. He has one of the top agencies. He's the lead guy. Just what do you call it? He just got Bronny James drafted. And so Nicole Lynn was absolutely amazing. The first NFL black NFL woman, period, to be in the green room with the top candidate. Louis Vegas, who is the president of North America Dow. Cynthia Marshall, who is the CEO of the Dallas Mavericks. She was in the house interfacing, giving out her contact information to kids. Jeff Tate, who's the new CFO. Dow has a president that is African-American. The North American HR director is also an African-American woman. And their CFO is also an African-American man. Karen Carter, we mentioned her. Tiffany Terrain, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Relationship Manager. The keynote speaker of this entire thing was Mr. Irvin Magic Johnson. He talked about the power of inclusivity and diversity and how that impacted his world. And then the Dow Treasure Academy was given a surprise donation for summer programming for $25,000. Thank you, Dow Chemical. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with our main conversation. Stick, stay, don't go away.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem, and we're back with more United Shades of Gray. I'm sounding a little bit like the president during his debate. Let me clear my throat. Thank you for those of you who are tuning in on today. And if you are recovering from what was considered a debate on yesterday, join the team. We're all
considered a debate. People are calling it a debate.
That's what they're calling it, but we've got other things to do. All right. So I'm excited to have all of you guys with us today. And those of you who are in our social media stream, continue to like, tag, and share this conversation with those that you know. We're going to talk about the counter movement to DEI based upon a Yahoo Finance article that was written out there in the Fortune section. And they were talking about this new move against DEI. I don't know if you guys are aware, but there is a real move against it. It's called MEI. Notice the consistency in the three letters that were used. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, which means that everyone is brought into the table. They're looking for a diverse workplace, and diversity is actually the outcome, I believe, toward hiring the best people and making sure that practices and the methods are all equal, and fairness, giving opportunity is the key that runs the DEI movement. And now there is a new movement that is out there called the MEI, Merit, Excellence, and Intelligence. This new acronym was coined by Alexander Wayne. He is the CEO of Scales AI, Artificial Intelligence. And it's a startup. Scale AI is a startup that is worth about $4 billion. That's billion with a B, dollars. And the idea is to ensure that companies are hiring the best individuals for the job. Now, I'm already getting a little perturbed and heated under my collar, but we'll continue this conversation because I think that it's important. So this new acronym was coined, I told you, by Alexander Wang. And the idea is, or he cites this new philosophy of merit, excellence, and intelligence for some really great partnerships that he has with OpenAI. If you have to almost be under a rock if you don't know it. Well, not in a technology space.
You have to be under a rock or over the age of 54.
Or maybe even 44. Because if you're not into technology or you're not really into stocks, then you really would know what OpenAI is. But anyways, OpenAI and the Department of Defense. And he says, hey, this is what we've been doing. Better than picking winners. He says it's better than picking winners and losers based on whether they're the right or the wrong race, gender. What do they call them when they say letters? You know, you get the letter
orientation.
Is that what it's called?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I heard the word the other day and I was like, anyways, so the right letters, pronouns, the right pronouns, and all of those things. So anyways, they hire only the best person for the job. This is what MEI does. They demand excellence. They prefer really smart people. And it was interesting because in my mind, and burning was like, okay, so this means that DEI, does that mean that they hire really dumb people or not the smartest people or not demand excellence? So I'm in my mind. I said, let me stay open, take a deep breath, relax, relate, release. And if you're out there thinking the same thing, I want you to do the same thing. But the idea is that Wang went on to say that he treats everyone as an individual, that they don't unfairly stereotype, tokenize, I love that word, tokenize or otherize people. And those are things that we've heard come up fairly recently. You know, you got a black man or black woman or an Indian man or something that is other than what most people would consider the mainstream population. They often are considered tokens in the eyes. And I wonder where that comes from, because I think tokenize is a word that comes from one of the minority population, like you're the token versus the mainstream. But anyways, we continue this conversation. And of course, our man, Elon Musk, is one of the people who loves this idea. And we've heard him have conversations about his disdain for DE&I. And so as I began to look and think about these things, and I thought about the counter movement to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to give some explanations, first of all. Before I even talk about why did DEI become a thing, I want to talk about the fact that diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is how I see this. The touchdown or the goal line for me getting into the end zone is diversity. I believe that whenever we have a diverse population, a diverse group of individuals, when that is what the ultimate goal is, I think, for the workplace and in spaces where people congregate. So diversity isn't the effort, diversity is the end goal. And the idea is that we would have equity and inclusiveness. Equity is if I give everyone a seat at the table with a mic, then we check 1 2 1 2, and everyone's mics work. Everyone's mic works. I had to figure out where those S's went. And so that is what equity is. And so a lot of times we open up and give people opportunity, but we don't acknowledge the fact of some of the barriers that have existed that don't really make that opportunity possible. So one of those things that equity does is make sure that we examine the barriers and the things that keep people from being able to seize and take opportunities that seemingly look like they're open for everybody. Now, inclusivity simply means that when you go to the dance, everyone is asked or given an opportunity to dance. So that's what it is. So equity and inclusion bring us to a place where we cross the diversity touchdown line. And so I want to make sure that we're clear on that, because I think that sometimes we get that wrong in our thinking and think that diversity means we get a whole bunch of people in the room. No, that's just making a colorful palette of people. And we've seen that happen before. So it's much bigger than that. But why did DEI come along is one of the questions. I want a couple of questions I want to ask. Because of lack of diversity in the workplace, we have needed to see a change in how things. Do you understand the whole thing about DEI and the importance or the need, why some folks feel the need for DEI? First of all, let me ask that question.
Kind of.
Okay.
I understand the point of view from which that comes.
Okay.
I don't necessarily agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I lean totally towards this MEI thing either.
Right.
But I understand where it comes from.
Okay, and if you understand where it comes from, my thing is that I don't think, if you don't understand it or you don't agree with it, that's a whole nother conversation. But understanding where it comes from, I think is vital. And I think that is where most people lack. Most people don't agree with it, but they don't understand the roots. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to also talk about when we look at efforts like this, because there was this whole turning over of affirmative action that started with the University of Michigan overturning affirmative action in their admission processes. We've seen it happen at Harvard and UCLA and other countries, other colleges across the nation. And so when we look at that, the biggest benefactor based upon the statistics, and I'm struggling on this morning, the biggest individual who benefited the most were white women. And typically in these types of situations, that tends to be the case. Women, and if you're a woman out there, I salute you, because when I look at the top earning businesses, when I look at the businesses who are new emerging businesses that are really performing the best, they are women-backed businesses. And women, our sisters, are doing it for themselves. Yes, Jonathan.
Where are you getting the information that the white women are the group that
is a historical fact that
I think I think the people that actually benefited the most, especially when we're talking higher education, are people of Asian descent.
Well,
because affirmative action excluded them in huge numbers.
Well, in terms of affirmative action, the proof is in the pudding and those statistics. And I did not bring those because typically in speaking and having this conversation, it's been understood that white women were the greatest benefactor. But we'll bring those in for another conversation for another day, because I do have Dr. Mamie Thorns. She's going to be coming in. She is the director of diversity out at Saginaw Valley State University to have that conversation. I think that it'll be very interesting to see her thoughts about the push against this idea of DEI. And then also, so I want to talk about meritocracy, or because meritocracy, and we live in America, and it is the greatest democracy that exists in the world. It is considered the home of the free, the land of the free, the home of the free, and the land of the brave. The land of the free and the home of the brave.
Why not both?
Both can be true, correct?
Both can be true.
Both can be true. It is a place where capitalism is king. And basically, capitalism means that people have a right to work hard, put together things, make money based upon their understanding, their ingenuity, their time, talent, and their resources. And I have no quorums at all with that. I think that it's absolutely beautiful that that can happen when you look at other countries and how they take wealth away. In socialist nations, that's not necessarily for me. And I was reading another article. It was so funny. Another article about it's okay to be rich. And I don't think that America should ever have a policy that being rich is a problem, because that is a part of the concept of the American dream. And it's definitely the concept of capitalism. But anyone can succeed through hard work and commitment and dedication is the idea. And so whenever I have these conversations, and I know that we're talking about DEI and MEI, a meritocracy and a diversity, equity, inclusion, meritocracy is the merit, excellence, and intelligence is the other one. But I want to always, I think that whenever you have these conversations, it's important for us to ask ourselves the questions: how did we get to where these things were considered or deemed necessary? And there are two words or two ideas that are very important. The first one is greenlining. If you've ever heard of, have you ever heard of greenlining?
I've heard of redlining. I haven't heard of greenlining.
Okay, so we'll talk about a little bit about greenlining and redlining. And in essence, when we talk about greenlining, we're talking about let's talk about redlining first, because it's going to make more sense if we talk about redlining and then talk about greenlining. Okay, were you thinking the same?
I agree.
Okay. So redlining was the idea, the concept, as people, as African Americans were no longer slaves and they're out there and they're in the workforce, and there was this march for equality. We're talking 60s, right? 50s, 60s. There's a march toward equality. People are, gaining wealth. There's I'm going to work on this plantation, or not this plantation. I'm going to work for this place cleaning homes, or I'm going to work here as a sanitation worker, or whatever it was. I'm going to save my money, because the idea of living in America was that everyone gets a slice of the pie. We're going to save our money, put our money together, and then we're going to go down to the bank and we're going to say, hey, we want to get a loan. We want to buy a house. And now you've done your work. You've saved up your deposit for your home. And the idea is you would go to a bank if you're going to finance it, or you'll go to, if you've raised all the money, you would go to a company that sells, and I'm not sure what they were called. They're considered real estate companies at the time, but whoever owns the land that was doing the home stuff. Y'all understand what I'm saying? And so, and you would buy a home. Well, what Redline would say would that, if certain people came in and they were trying to purchase a home, let's start with the very basics, that they were denied access to be able to receive a loan, or a mortgage, I should say. Some were loans, but specifically mortgages in this case. And so they weren't allowed to enter into that part of the American dream. And then also, in some certain cases, they were allowed a mortgage, or to get funded a loan, but they could only purchase loans in certain areas. There was a line that was red that says you can go here, but you can't go here. Or they would allow them a loan in an area that was not considered prime real estate. And so there was literally in their maps of the city, and I was looking at the one for the city of Saginaw, there were literally these barriers that were redlined, and they were not allowing people of certain colors to get certain types of loans in certain areas. Now, they were allowing, because this was the whole thing. The government then got involved and said, "Hey, we got to produce loans for people. Let's." Whenever the government gets into business, and black folks, I know y'all probably celebrated the moment, like, "Yes, we go." But when you look at stuff and how it turns out in the long run, it seems like it always comes back to bite us in the butt.
Ask yourself what the last thing the government did well is, and see if you want them taking on something else.
And so, yeah, and that's a good question, because when we look, we look at all these new deals, brand new deals, and all of these different things that have come up, they haven't turned out very well for us. And this is one of those examples. The government says, "Hey, we got people coming back from war. Let's get them this GI Bill they can get." And blacks were denied these loans that were supposedly backed by the government. And so what eventually happens is that we end up with a place where blacks could not get certain loans for a period of time. Then when they were starting to be funded these loans, they could not get them in those best areas. Now I know the conversations about DEI versus MEI, diversity versus merit, right? And so as we look at this, what took place eventually was there was entering into this idea of greenlining. And what greenlining said was, "Hey, we want to put a movie theater up and a couple cool restaurants, and we're going to do some curb appeal." And so they would greenline, actually put a line, those same areas that they were not allowing blacks to go and to invest in terms of home ownership, were also the same areas where they built curbs, and they would put restaurants, and they would put movie theaters and water fountains and courtyards. And so the government actually wanted to build homes. And this is how, when I talk about racism, it's not always about the Klan, and because the racism is often in the policies, and we see that situation taking place. So now we have one area that is predominantly white, that has curbs and houses and curb lines and tree lines and movie theaters and restaurants, and another area that is predominantly black, and they don't have all of those facilities. So when we look at it, starting off from the beginning, home ownership was something that only the white could do. So there was a jump start. So we're going to trade in, we're going to get a bigger, better house in this curb appealed space now. And now when I do this, what happens to the property values? Property values increase. So there is a disproportionality between the level of growth in these green line areas versus these other areas where blacks were able to live. The other thing that then takes place is that in those areas, what happens with your educational system? Where is education based upon? It's based upon your property value. So that property value, those taxes from those areas, now are able to afford a very powerful school, good schools, good education, all the facilities and things that you need. And this was the beginning of really how this wealth gap started, apart from slavery. We're not talking about that. We're talking a little bit more modern than that, 50s, 60s, moving in up through 68, I think, is when redlining actually became officially illegal, redlining and greenlining. But now you have property values that have a very different value. You have schools that have a very different function and capability for those areas. And you're producing kids in those areas. Those kids, if you need a loan, you can pull money out in your home, send your kid to school. The values are not the same in these other areas where blacks were allowed to go. So I'm getting to where we're going. But as you continue to do this and you're generating wealth, you're increasing wealth, because not only once those kids are done, they have a better education, which puts them in alignment. If we're talking about merit, they're going to have a better education because they've had better exposure to better opportunities as it relates to education. And this continued a system throughout time and now. And so this is why I think resilience, when we talk about the SOAR that Dow has, the R in SOAR is resiliency. Because even through all of those things, you still see how blacks, given opportunities, were allowed to, and I say this, and hear me out, the successes that Black Americans have had, those, and I call them ADOS, African-American descendants of slaves. They are very unique people in this country, like no other immigrant that exists here. When you look at what they've been able to endure and overcome, it is a great sign of resiliency. And what I mean by that is that even through all of those things, we now see when given opportunities, and white Americans, the freedoms that existed were not because all white people were prejudiced. And I think that that's important to say. And I think that sometimes we get into these conversations and we omit to share that very important fact. The freedoms that Black folks experienced were because there were white Americans who also said these things are very important for us to do for all Americans. And we had white Americans that stood side by side to fight for those freedoms because they understood the importance of America being this place where everyone could truly pursue their dreams. And so as we see this take place, we now have this very big difference in between what whites were making, the types of jobs a white can make, the places where white folks were living, the types of things and accommodations in their communities, the educational systems. All of these things are portrayals or things that add to that thing. So as we begin to move in the 60s and 70s, there was a real desire to make things different. And even into the the 90s and these 2000s that we're dealing with, we're talking about why there was a need for all of these equitable programs that were created. And it was because the starting blocks were not the same. Then there were systems that the government put in place for funding and creating the American dream that were not consistent. And so they began to create opportunities for Blacks to have good education. And when they began to do that, they then were and remove the stigma, not necessarily create, you have this because we've never been given anything. But giving an opportunity to this kind of education and giving this opportunity to have this type of learning, and those things then created a generational situation where some Blacks could then go in, get an education, change their lives. I'll tell you, knowledge is power, and if knowledge is power, then ignorance is dangerous. And what the country has done for so long was keep Black folks ignorant about the importance of education, how the financial systems work. Many of us don't understand that, and just the way that we are able to move up in the world. And so we see that happening. And so then when we get to the idea, the meritocracy or the merit, excellence, and intelligence does not take into account, or it says that the best person should get the job. What it fails to take into account is that for so long, Blacks were not allowed the opportunity. They were not allowed the opportunity to be a part of that process. And so what it also fails to realize is that there have been so many, the idea of nepotism that we were talking about, LeBron James. People are mad, but he's doing what white Americans, you go back and look at the Rockefellers and they put their children in positions of power, to take over the empire, whether they were ready or prepared to step in the leadership role. That is exactly what happens. You make your children's future by the efforts and the work that you've done. And whether you like it or not, it is a part of how our country has always run. And so those are the things that have happened. So we have to get to a place that we can say that when the best person shows up, they will have the opportunity to invest and to be a part of the process. And from that opportunity, they will grow in terms of the diversity of that organization. And so I think what the DEI solution was, let's choose the best candidates. And then when we choose the best candidates and there's not much difference between those candidates, we're also going to look at what our companies have historically looked like, what have been the downfall, because whenever you have a diverse population, you always have a better population, because all of those different factors that people bring with them, the experiences, and their educational experiences and their cultural experiences have a way of making us better as a nation. What I love about this nation, I'm going to say this. You've heard of the melting pot idea, Jonathan?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And the idea is that we are all a melting pot. And I always have subscribed. I heard this probably, I guess, at about the 11th grade. The idea of the toss salad.
I've heard of it.
Okay, so the idea of a toss salad is that toss salad is, you got the lettuce, which represents the earth, but then you got, maybe olives and tomatoes and peppers and mushrooms, all of these different things that are added to this salad, and everything retains its identity. But when you eat it, it adds the flavor and the savor that you experience. I want to thank you guys for continually listening to United Shades of Gray. I want you to share this with your individuals. People stop me on the streets and say, listen, I've been listening to your show. And I'm like, what show? They're like, the one where you're talking about race in America. We love how you are positioning those conversations. I want to thank you guys for continually listening. Hey, it's your listenership that gives us the opportunity to do what we do. Take care of yourselves and each other as the summer rolls in. Make sure you enjoy those around you that you love. I love you all. God bless you. Grace and peace.